Hello. Day after the first Friday of the month, so we get the Joker chart. We can see the red line is still doing its thing, way away from all the other coloured bits of string that were the recessions since the Second World War in the United States. And Calculated Risk, who puts together this chart, has had to tack an extra year on because it's run out even longer than what was in here as the dark brown, the other most sticky over one, which was the 2001 recession. Now, for people that haven't followed this chart, it's basically you zero out over top left at the lowest level of unemployment before the recession starts. So I'll work it backwards for this one. The current employment recession, this red one, is still at -4.5. So we know from everything that was on the news yesterday that the unemployment rate in the United States is 8.5%. So this is zeroed 4 years and a bit ago at 4% unemployment. And since then it's come down to over 10% unemployment at the bottom and has now come up to -8.5 unemployment, which is 4.5 lower than it was right at the beginning. And all the other coloured bits of string are done the same way. And the longest sticky out one before this was the 2001 recession, but we've gone over the length of that now, and we are still 1, 2, 3, 4.5, obviously, 4.5% below that. It's still an absolute disaster area. And I noticed it was quite amusing yesterday when a good report came out for the unemployment, that it didn't take people long in the afternoon to really look into this and go, when it really comes down to it, this unemployment report, which is good, it's only good compared to the really bad ones that we've had. But now, it was strange, it's as though people started looking at it for the first time and then went, but no, it's still exceptionally bad. And there are so many bits and parts in it and the way it's presented that pessimism set in by the end of the afternoon on a good report, because it was good enough that people could see, seemingly to me, the way I was looking at it being reported, it was good enough that people could open their minds to it and really have a look at the data. And when they looked at the data, they realized that's shocking, as though they'd seen it for the first time when it's been going on for 4 years. It was very interesting yesterday to me. Obviously, that was me putting my spin on it, but that's really the way I saw it yesterday. But you can see, it's still out of the world, much more shocking than anything we've had since the Second World War. Second chart is European youth unemployment. Now, I've kind of put this together to talk about a bigger picture. It is unemployment that's the main drive here. Germany is at 8.1 youth unemployment. There's no countries that are between 10 and 20, because the UK cuts in at youth unemployment at 22. Germany is just out on a limb, strangely different. And what we have here really in Germany is really something like the equivalent of China. They do vendor financing, and they have a manipulated currency rate. And really, Germany has a manipulated currency rate by lumping themselves in with basket cases, sharing the same currency. They have a lowered currency. If it was Germany on its own, their currency would be far and away larger, more powerful, bigger, more expensive. Imports would be cheaper for them, but exporting would be more difficult with their stronger currency. But it's not, because they're lashed themselves to basket cases, and they have the Hart laws and strange employment laws, working laws, which you could say, well, everybody else is going to have to do that. But you can't everybody else do that, because the whole thing is geared, it's governmentally geared with the low exchange rate, vendor financing of the rest of these countries. UK at 22% youth unemployment, France at 24%, Ireland 30%, Italy 30%, Portugal 30%, Greece 46%, and Spain equivalent of 50%. But the German savings have been vendor financing. They've been lent to these countries so they can buy Mercedes. Mercedes, I think, sold more cars this year than ever, or they're doing jolly well anyway. The big question I'm putting out in this presentation is, where is the employment going to come from? We can say, well, everyone's got to be like Germany or China. And then that should get us scratching our heads. Can everybody be like Germany and China? Okay, what else have I got here? Yeah, I've had this up for a while. You can see it's December the 29th. Will green energy really cost Britons £4,600 a year per head? Now, I've been reading this since this has been up in various places, and it's frighteningly badly reported. It's striking headline from the front of the Daily Telegraph. Greener energy will cost £4,600 each a year for Britons, and no doubt it will fuel any incipient hostility to renewables among the broadsheets. The whole thing is horrendously badly, what do we call this, broadcasted, reported on. The report initially, the more you look into it, horribly badly presented, and then the reporters, some picked up on the horribly badly reportedness of the report, but so many didn't, and just reported the findings of the report. But the bottom line is, green energy doesn't work. And it really isn't. Green energy doesn't work now. There's really no technology that we can envisage that will make green energy work in a money-wise. We just don't have it. We can say, well, we'll develop it, but we might develop it, but at the moment we have not got it. We just don't have it. And green energy is going to be horrendously much more expensive than any other energy. We're really talking oil, gas, or nuclear. Nuclear is the cheapest, almost by far, but not if you read this report that these comments, these headlines are based on. I'll go to this last one and then maybe come back through. We'll see how we go. Nuclear safety work to cost France billions. France and its national electricity supplier EDF have been told they will need to spend billions of euros on making their 58 nuclear reactors conform to tough new standards deemed necessary after last year's atomic disaster at Fukushima. The way I have read what I've read, it's cheaper to build nuclear power stations, maintain them up to these higher standards, and to pay the huge amount for decommissioning and getting rid of the spent fuel than it is to go with either oil, gas or green. Oil's obviously expensive. If you happen to have huge lots of gas on your doorstep, and it's good gas, as in you don't have to cause earthquakes to get it out of the ground, then gas is fine. But not many people have natural gas just waiting to be used. Green, at the moment, is basically a waste of time, money and effort. It might change, but there's absolutely no sign of it changing in the foreseeable future. Nuclear is the way to go. And I'm not saying that to push nuclear. Frankly, I couldn't give a damn, except I pay the cheapest electricity in Europe because of the French nuclear. But that should shock the pants off people, that nuclear, with everything factored in, all the decommissioning and the getting rid of the spent fuel rods, is cheaper than anything else. And then we can go back through, and it's going to cost Britons £4,600 a year. What's that, $6,000, whatever it is. Energy is very expensive, unless you can just stick a little straw in the ground and bubbling crude comes up. Let's go back. I'm just going backwards through these now. European youth unemployment. We're going to get world youth unemployment. These kids didn't ask to be born. They didn't ask to go to school. They've tried to enjoy themselves and have a happy child life. But then they come to a time where they can't resist it anymore and have to go out to the real world and get a job. And you've got average unemployment there, 23, 29, 30. Greece and Spain, 40, 50% unemployment. It's not fair. It's not right. It's not proper. I know it's happened in the past and everything's, we've all got on with it and done it. But unless we can sort out what we're going to do in the future to have jobs, where are all the jobs going to come from? The Western jobs. One of the things that they decided round their board tables in Western Europe when inflation took off in the 80s, besides crushing the unions and always having a certain buffer stock of unemployed people so wages wouldn't go up too much. Another thing they did was to decide on global, whatever they call it, this global world that we now live in. So there would always be a buffer stock of unemployment out there, or cheap labour out there, which would keep down the wage costs of the home countries, and imports of new goods coming in would be using these cheap labour and keeping down inflation. Since the 80s, it's hard to understand how the inflation of the 80s shook the governments of the Western world. They were shaken. They were being voted out of office because of inflation. Future or subsequent government people knew that how dangerous inflation was and knew that they had to keep it under control. Everything that we've had since then at least has been contrived to keep control of inflation, and then it's been contrived to do an awful lot more besides. We've had 30 years of contrived getting people employed. The last, and I think what's going to subsequently be seen as the latest and greatest scam of selling houses to people in the Western world for hugely stupid inflated prices, was not for anything really except to get people absolutely welded into the system. When you've got a mortgage, you can't sod around, because if you sod around you can't pay your mortgage and then you're out of the game. To drag people into the game and to get money pumped out into the system. They know how money is created. Banks pumped out this huge quantity of money for mortgages. This is to the entire populations of Western world, buying one, sometimes two houses, the biggest outlay they ever make. And there was millions of this going on, millions of people, tens, maybe hundreds of millions of people making this biggest purchase they would ever make in their lives, and it's been compressed into a small period of time. Huge amounts of extra money was coming into the economy. Everyone felt rich. It really comes down to good trick. Now what are you going to do? And you could say there are two choices. It's get the government out of the way, let private do it, which is it's impossible. We've had 30 years at least of most really contrived government contrivances. That's how the system works nowadays. It's how the system works. To think that government will get out of the way and private will do anything but just drive down wages to 2 bowls of rice a day is utter lunacy. It's going to have to be contrived to stay up. Now, if they can possibly come to the understanding that it's going to fall down and then try and let it just slip down gradually, that would be marvellous. But I don't think politicians are going to be intelligent enough to see this. We've got an uphill struggle with the energy thing, and we've got an uphill struggle because we've come down into a trough off the back of all this huge borrowing, making us feel nice and rich. That's come to an end. But it's a nice whoosh down, and we've got a little bit of momentum still going. But now we've got the uphill struggle that debt now has to be paid back in an environment of more and more expensive basic energy. It will take genius to make it not fatal for an awful lot of people. And let's hope they've got the sense to do it.